One.
Second down and 9.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Second and 9 podcast. That's our new little intro that we got. Tony D put together. He's off today. He doesn't really give a crap about the Giants-Jets game, but I got a couple they act like they're enthusiastic Jets fans, but they seem a little bit more defeated than anything, just like myself about the Giants. So I'm going to introduce let's do Mr. Dietz over there in his hoodie and his orange T-shirt underneath. What's going on, Mr. Dietz?
Not much. I know I'm wearing orange, and it's not for the Mets. I'm a Yankee fan and a Jet fan, and we're going to talk about some Jets today.
That's a little Islanders.
Little Islanders color. Yep. Don't think this is Mets. Don't think this is Mets related.
All right. Thanks for the Mets. We got Zaddy on with us too. Zaddy, is that your born name, like on your birth certificate?
Yeah, it's official. I was given it at birth, and it's stuck with me ever since. So.
All right. Well, welcome to the podcast.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. You guys have any opening statements for the Jets?
As you know, I'm a very, very sad Jets fan. But, hey, we're playing the Giants today, so there's a bit of optimism in the room. So we'll see what happens.
That room honestly doesn't look that optimistic. It's pretty dark and dreary in that room.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's very dark. But, I got someone sleeping over here next to me, so don't want to wake her up.
Oh, that's fair. All right, boys, let's get into it real quick. So, we got Giants-Jets today at 1 o'clock. Giants are a 3-point favorite. We'll get into, I think, a little bit more of a topics of discussion because this game is obviously kind of a trash matchup with how bad the teams have been playing. But we kind of touched on it a little bit before we went live and started recording. This whole coaching situation on both sides. We've got, obviously, teams in flux offensively, two coaches that are offensive-minded. And we'll throw it to Zaddy, you first. How long do you think it's going to take for these franchises to get rid of either coach? Because it doesn't seem like their future is with either one. I mean, they haven't had any success this year. Shermer is going back to last year, but I mean, there's all these whispers about the Johnsons apparently liking Gase and wanting to give him, I guess, more of a leash. But I mean, they haven't really showed me anything to really keep him around because Darnold looks completely lost.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation right now. And, I know Woody Johnson, he wants to see a bigger sample size from Adam Gase. And, I don't blame him, right? He needs if you look at, the Jets from the beginning of the season, like, so many players injured and, players, in and out of the lineups and whatnot. And it's just hard to really get a vision of, how Adam Gase sees everything. But, it's – hold on one sec, guys. Sorry. What were we talking about? Sorry.
Yeah, no, basically I think –
I had something pop up on my computer and it's all – all right, here we go.
Yeah, you gotta stop watching all of that
that
non-stuff that shouldn't be talked about on these type of videos. But yeah, I think more or less, I think the point you're trying to make is that he hasn't necessarily had a lot of success in it. You don't really know where they're going offensively because, I mean, we were talking about it before, the whole Le'Veon Bell situation. I mean, he got touches last week against the Dolphins, but I think the way that they're utilizing him in the offense isn't necessarily ideal. I mean, they should maybe take a page out of like the Steelers book and how the Steelers have utilized him in past years. But again, it's a tough comparison because the O-line isn't close to as good as like those Steelers offensive lines, and they can't seem to protect Darnold at all. So, I mean, I kind of lead on the side of they got to be – or Gase has to be coaching Darnold to be able to get the ball out of his hands a lot more quickly. And I've said the same thing about Shermer and the Giants, like with Daniel Jones, because obviously Daniel Jones, my cousin Tony D has dubbed him as like Danny Loose Change instead of Danny Dimes because he just can't hang on to the ball and he's fumbling and putting it on the ground too easily. But Dietz, where are you along the lines of Gase? Like, how much more of a leash would you give him? Let's put a scenario today. What if it gets ugly against the Giants?
Yeah, it's kind of a tough call now because for me, now that you have a new GM and Maccagnan is gone, I still would give Gase. Okay, say this year is a disaster for me. And again, I'm not saying he's amazing. I think you have to give him to next year. Give him an off season. He wants to bring in his own guys, draft offensive linemen. I mean, what's kind of crazy is that Maccagnan Maccagnan was a Gase fan. Maccagnan brought in Gase, but then their biggest disagreement, the biggest rift in the organization, ultimately became between Maccagnan and Gase. Gase didn't want the Le'Veon Bell signing. He didn't want. I don't think he wanted even Mosley to come in. So and now you have a new GM and Joe Douglas, who they brought into Philadelphia. I think you just need to get Gase and Joe Douglas on the same page. If this year is a disaster and they go 3-13, 4-12, to say, okay, it's another terrible Jet season, but then you get them on the same page next year. You give Gase what he wants, and you just go from there. So I think Chris Johnson is going to be patient, even though, and again, since he took over the team, the ownership of the team, the Jets are something like, I saw a stat the other day, it was like 12-30 or 10-30, something terrible. So ownership is a problem too. But I think Gase won't get fired. But I honestly wouldn't fire him yet, but that's what I think is going to happen. Even if today is a disaster, you can't react just because you're playing the Giants, a team in town. You can't overreact to it. And as you said, and we've said before, the offensive line is terrible. They haven't drafted linemen a good lineman in the draft in years. They've drafted all defensive players: Leonard Williams, Quinnen Williams from Bama, Marcus May. I mean, everyone they've taken has been a defensive-minded player. And the guys that they brought in free agency for offensive linemen, Kelechi Osemele has been hurt, and Ryan Khalil has been a disaster. So they need to focus on offensive line in the draft, and I think that's where the Jets will get better. They can be other teams have gotten better. Teams like the Colts have gone from worst offensive line in the league, who couldn't protect Luck, who was getting sacked every other play, and now they have one of the best lines in the league. And a guy like Jacoby Brissett, who's good. They make him look like Tom Brady because he has all day to throw. So I think offensive line is like the biggest thing, and I think Gase, give him time to fix it. That's my opinion.
I mean, I think context matters though too in a lot of situations, because especially I think going into this year, at least a lot of the other Jets fans that I've spoken to, they were so optimistic to the point where they're talking about playoff appearance and this and that. And I think to go 2-14 or even 4-12, like you said, and I think 4-12 at this point might be a stretch. To go 4-12 after those type of expectations, and if Darnold continues to look like he's regressing, I don't know. That's a big red flag, especially with all these rumors of them also potentially trying to get rid of Robbie Anderson, trade him away, even Jamal Adams. There was that whole rumor about them possibly going to trade him to Dallas. I think it's a hot mess, and I mean, I'd be a proponent of getting rid of him at the end of the year if it just goes completely south like that, because I think regardless of wanting to give him a chance or not, you have to see some sort of improvement and cohesiveness of the whole team. And it sounds like too that he's kind of losing the locker room. I mean, you see Jamal Adams almost throwing a hissy fit on Twitter, complaining about the organization and everything. And if he loses the locker room, that's a big problem. And losing the locker room as a coach, and then going into an off season and bringing in new people and getting rid of some people, it'll continue, I think, to rub players the wrong way, because it's not like that was any different than the situation in Miami. So yeah, that's kind of and I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of that signing anyway, bringing in Gase, but I think the whole situation of them bringing in Gase and then him getting Maccagnan fired and how that all transpired, it's kind of questionable. It seems
typical Jets though too. It's again, going back. So Maccagnan is the one who wanted Gase, and then they ultimately, those two get into a fight. And when Bowles was coach, Maccagnan and Bowles didn't see eye to eye either. It's always something with this team. It's
they're doing it back. They're doing it backwards too, because isn't it typically where the ownership will hire GM and then the GM will get the choice of who the head coach or whose coaching staff is going to be, and it's been backwards ever since the whole Rex Ryan situation. I mean, with Itzig and stuff.
Bowles too. Maccagnan didn't usually the GM has a say. Maccagnan didn't hire Bowles. Maccagnan had no say in that. They came in together and they were on completely different pages. So and Idzik too. Idzik had like maybe one or two good picks. It's just there's no cohesiveness whatsoever.
Yeah,
There's no
I think the whole organization is just in shambles. Let's be real. Honestly, I think Woody Johnson needs to like legit sell the team, and just kind of we just need a complete makeover. From the top all the way down.
He's like an ambassador now. They gave it to his son, who knows less than he does. So
yeah, I know. Yeah, it's pretty scary.
It's,
I know
you think of like quarterbacks the Jets could have had, and I know other teams passed on him, but it's like, and I don't know how good Darnold's going to be. Like, I mean, again, the offensive line for me is the biggest problem. If you don't have time to throw, you can't do anything. But in 2017, they took Jamal Adams, but I mean, they passed on Mahomes. It's like I know other teams passed on Patrick Mahomes too. Like Bears took Trubisky.
Right. Yeah.
But it's just like nothing goes right. They're one of those franchises. Nothing goes right. So you become numb to it.
Same old Jets, exactly. Every year we go into the season with these like high expectations, like, oh, maybe the Jets could actually do something. But it always turns out to be just one big epic failure. Like the higher my expectations are, the lower it actually is in reality.
Yeah, you get instances like the butt fumble and stuff, which is you can't even make it up. You can't even think about that type of situation until it actually happens.
Yeah.
But to stay on the topic, I guess, of like them drafting Darnold, how would you guys unbiasedly, rank or compare Daniel Jones versus Darnold? Obviously, Darnold's he came in last year and he's played a little bit more than Daniel Jones, but I don't know how much you guys have watched of the Giants. How would you compare like the play so far of either one? Because as a lot of people have said, Darnold has looked like he's regressed a little bit. I think he's just like a little bit more of a victim of circumstance. Even though I wasn't that high on him coming out of the draft, but it's just obviously the team's been a mess. But in terms of play, how would you guys rank who's looked better and has potentially like a better future, not taking like the teams and the surroundings, I guess, into account, more so like the talent of each player?
For me, I'd probably lean Daniel Jones. Like I think he's a little bit more. I think he's a little bit more athletic than Darnold in terms of like scrambling and this is overall athletic mobility. He's got a decent arm too. Not that Darnold doesn't, but and again, I know you said you can't take into, the environment that they're in, but I think overall, Daniel Jones is in a better organization historically. I mean, the Giants have been a great franchise since their beginning for the most part.
For the most part, though, because the last few years, it's been kind of another hot mess too. It's been questionable situations.
I don't know. You know what, guys? I just feel like the Giants have more like credibility, right? And it starts from the top. And I feel like the Maras just know how to run an organization way better than the Johnsons do, So, like, in terms of the future, like, I want to say Darnold because I'm a biased fucking Jets fan. But, like, I think it's going to be Daniel Jones,
Yeah, Daniel Jones looks like he holds on to the ball too long a little bit. But that's something that can be fixed. I mean, sure. It's still too early to really say who is. But, I mean, I would have to lean Daniel Jones for me. This point.
Yeah, honestly, I think in order for Darnold to have a successful career, he's going to have to find, the right coach with the right system. And I just feel like, him and Gase are not on the same, page yet. And, there's a lot of shit going down with that offense. And, it's not clicking right now. But if it does click, there is potential. But, at this point, like, who knows? I guess we got to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. At least for this week, though, who are you looking to have a better game today, fantasy-wise? Because I think I'm actually Zaddy in your league. I'm actually supposed to face Daniel Jones this week. So
fantasy implications. Wow. So Chad Shatner starting Daniel Jones against the Jets, huh? So
yeah. I mean, I don't think that's a bad play at all. I don't even think Darnold's a terrible play fantasy-wise this week either, because the Giants.
I don't honestly. I can see both quarterbacks kind of having like a little breakout game today. Just because historically both offenses have been just kind of really shit. This entire season. and both defenses, in my opinion, aren't very good either. So I can just see this game being like a huge like aerial attack, like Darnold and Jones putting up 25 plus points, 3 touchdowns each. That's a game that you would hope for, right? On paper, Jets versus Giants doesn't look too good of a game, but from a fantasy perspective, we could be in for a treat. We'll see.
Well, that's also what I'm hoping for my DraftKings account too, because I have money on the over for this game because I'm kind of expecting that too. I don't know if I'm expecting 3 touchdowns for each quarterback, but I'm leaning on that higher end of like a scoring, and I think the over under was 44.5. So a 24-21 game would cover it for me. So I think that was a decent bet for today because I think at least for the Jets, they can't play any worse than they did last week. And they're not going to be facing, like I said, like any tough defense this year or this week because the Giants really have no pass rush at all, and that's been like their Achilles heel, I think, defensively this year. Because
the Giants were kind of okay last Monday night against Dallas. Like they broke. Like for the longest time they were like bending but not breaking, and then a few big plays the Cowboys hit. I mean, the Jets looked terrible against Miami. I mean, I think fantasy-wise, Daniel Jones and Barkley should have good days today. The Darnold probably will too, but I would have to lean Daniel Jones to score. I mean, they were getting torched by Ryan Fitzpatrick there for periods in the Miami game. They couldn't stop anybody. So.
Yeah, but I also think Miami had a lot to play for, right? They're going into like a tough divisional game against the Jets. Like they're defeated on the season, right? They were playing this game like it was a Super Bowl. Like no one wants to lose in the AFC East to the Jets. That's just how it is, right? So I think the morale was so high that the Dolphins they look better than they actually were. But I don't know. I just think it's a Jets home game. I think Darnold comes out and he's starts throwing the ball around, gets Le'Veon involved, if he plays. So we'll see what happens.
Are we going to see any like ghosts or black stray cats like on the field today? I feel like there's something's going to happen at some point because
I don't think the Giants defense is that good, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's going to be some sort of like random event that's going to happen, either like a complete debacle by like either Darnold or Daniel Jones. But on the topic of that, let's play a quick game with the Giants and Jets. We're calling it Adopt or Ghost since we're seeing black cats in the field. We're seeing apparently Sam Darnold's seeing ghosts. I don't know if he's still seeing them, but let's play this game with a couple of the people in different in each organization. So let's start first with Gettleman and Joe Douglas. Dietz, we'll start off with you. Would you adopt Gettleman and Joe Douglas, or just ghost them and try and find another GM?
I'm gonna say adopt for Gettleman and Joe Douglas. I mean, at this point, Daniel Jones looks better than we thought he was gonna look, and so everyone is ripping Gettleman, saying, "Oh, how can you take Daniel Jones at 6?" And Joe Douglas honestly just got hired. I mean, McCagnon was fired after the draft, and Joe Douglas has had minimal time with the team. I mean, he's probably has moves already he wants to make for the offseason for next year. So I'm not saying they're the answer, but I think, again, you probably got to give them more time. So I would say adopt both.
You're generous. Zaddy, what about you?
Yeah, you know what? I'm kind of with Dietz here. I'm sticking with both for now. I mean, obviously, Gettleman drafted Daniel Jones early on, and no one really liked that whole draft pick. But it seems like he has a vision, and he's got some sort of plan, right? So I like that, especially in the NFL. That's why I think Daniel Jones over time, is going to be a fairly decent NFL quarterback. In terms of the Jets GM, I'm also adopting him too. I'm not completely against Gase. Even though losing to Miami, his old team, it was tough to take. I don't know. I just think that there's potential there, and he has to get on the same page with Darnold in that offense. But I think time will tell. So yeah, I'm adopting both. I like both.
Yeah, for me, I think I would probably adopt Joe Douglas. I think he's in like almost a no-win situation right now. I think I would like to see him as a GM without Gase there, where he has more free reign to make his own decisions and roster changes. In terms of Gettleman, I honestly don't really know where to go with this because yeah, he's drafted Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones has looked pretty good at times. But I mean, the construction of the rest of the roster is pretty poor. I mean, they've tried to scrap together somewhat of a stable offensive line, and they paid Nate Solder a ton of money, and he hasn't performed well. So I think I'm leaning more towards Ghost and Gettleman because I don't see this team being good within the next 3-4 years at least with the current structure of the roster. I mean, they got rid of Odell, they got some picks back. We'll see what happens with that, but they really have to shore up the front seven and then reinforce, I think, the offensive line because we've Tony D and I have had arguments before, maybe not arguments, more discussions about just the whole situation about drafting like Saquon Barkley, and it's like what is the value really of like some of these players like Saquon Barkley who from a talent standpoint are look like they're Hall of Fame worthy, but is that really going to make your team better like in the long run? Like are you going to waste his prime years or like are you going to take advantage of it and actually have a team that can make the playoffs and compete for championship? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And at this point, I think it's looking pretty bleak. Like they're going to potentially waste these years. I mean, unless we see Daniel Jones turn into a potential superstar quarterback within the next few years and be able to put the team on his back, then maybe that's one thing. But at least from what I've seen so far, I can't count on that. So I think I would at this point I would go Skettleman.
Go Skettleman. Again, if it works out though, because that was the biggest thing. I mean, them taking Barkley or taking a quarterback. And they're saying, oh, that was the quarterback-heavy draft. How do you take Barkley and not, take the quarterback? But, I mean, now, at this point, it's like it might work out. I mean, if Jones becomes a stud and Barkley is Barkley and stays healthy, I mean, then the Giants will be okay. And as you said, they have to show up the offensive line. But, again, signing Nate Solder, it's like anytime the Patriots don't want somebody, you have to – like Belichick doesn't want anybody, you have to, think, maybe we shouldn't take the guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. I haven't even thought about that, to be honest with you, but yeah,
Belichick doesn't want somebody. He's probably fucking terrible.
Yeah, no, they know when to cut bait. I mean, they cut bait of Jamie Collins, and now they got him back coincidentally, which is kind of funny.
That heater gets the revive. Yeah, feels so good.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
We got some noise in the background. Sounds like.
Yeah, sorry
but,
guys.
let's
family
move on
coming in with
to
the baby.
Shermer and Gase. Adopt or ghost? Deets, you go first.
Yeah, it's along the same lines with the GMs. I'm going to adopt Gase for another year. Again, if he's wasn't happy with Maccagnan, that affects everything. If he didn't if Maccagnan didn't want Bell, he didn't even want Mosley, and I think somebody else he brought in on the defensive side of the ball that Gase just didn't want the big money to be spent. So I say adopt Gase. This year's a disaster. We give him next year the off season to figure things out and have an off season with Darnold. And Shermer, again, I honestly don't know enough of what the Giants feel about Pat Shermer or where, I think that's going to be another situation where you're going to probably adopt Pat Shermer. Just you'd have to have a full season. After this, you have to have a full season of Daniel Jones and then evaluate Pat Shermer and how he's doing. So I'd have to say adopt on both for me.
Okay. Zaddy, you.
Oh, this is tough. I want to adopt Adam Gase, but as much as I want to adopt him, I legit want to ghost this guy. I mean, yeah, I want to say I'll probably give him to the end of the season. We got some games coming up. I think we're playing Cincinnati, we play Miami again, we'll play the Oakland Raiders. We have a fairly easy schedule. And I think he has to show something, being the offensive guru that everyone says he is, or that, self-proclaimed. I think he's got to produce something in the next couple games before the season ends if he wants a legit shot of being at the helm next year. You know, I just think the schedule is too easy, and he's got to show, you know, the city of New York that, hey, like, you know, we can win games and we can do it in the style that I want to do it at. You know, in terms of Shermer, um, honestly, like I kind of what Deet said. I'd probably adopt him. I think he's done a fine job with the talent that he has on that roster. And, you know, I just think his primary goal right now is just to kind of help, you know, give Daniel Jones confidence, you know, build him up as a quarterback and, you know, try and get Barkley involved in that offense more. And, you know, I like Shermer. You know, I think he's a good dude. I think he did well in Minnesota. And, you know, I think the Giants would kind of be foolish to get rid of him. But I'm
And
also
the
not a
Giants have
Giants
had
fan. So.
injuries too, right?
What's that?
I mean, the Giants have had injuries too, right? Did Evan Ingram have a concussion? I know they missed Sterling Shepard and
Yeah, they did.
suspended for. I mean,
Yeah,
you get
Ingram
all-
and Shepard are out this week.
yeah. I mean, if you get the healthy pieces, I mean, that's big for Darnold. I mean, not Darnold, Daniel Jones. So
It's I mean, apples and oranges are the same, I mean, pretty much. But I mean, I'm leaning more towards if I don't see at least drastic improvement from the quarterbacks this season, I would ghost Gase. I'm already pretty much ready to ghost Gase and Shermer too. I think if Daniel Jones continues to turn the ball over a ton and they're not moving the ball offensively, I think that's like a huge problem. And I understand like your point about the roster not being that great, like for the Giants, but again, you want to see. You always notice like with any good head coach, they find a way to at least have the team show flashes, and the Giants really haven't shown any flashes at this point in the season. I mean, they've had like games against like division rivals, especially against the Cowboys. Cowboys are a good team, but they haven't really competed at all. The first half in that game the other day, on the Monday night game, they kept it close, but it was because Dak Prescott threw an early interception, and they were able to turn the Cowboys over. But overall, I've been extremely disappointed in both teams. And I think if the Giants only are able to muster up like 5 wins this season, I think even though it would only be 2 years in, if they can find a better option, I'd be willing and happy with them moving on. Even though I think Shermer's a nice guy too, as you said, Zaddy. But I don't know. It's a little bit frustrating because there's no like I guess concrete direction that you see either of these teams really going in, at least from like a positive standpoint. Everything is either too many turnovers or too many plays, especially like for the Giants defensively, where guys are running wide open, and that reflects poorly on the coaches. So yeah, I think by the end of the season, I'll probably end up saying that I'm going to ghost both of them. But what about let's say the quarterbacks? I know that you guys are Jets fans. You're probably going to be more optimistic than not, but I guess I'll start this one off. I guess for now, I'm going to be biased and say that I will adopt Daniel Jones, I guess, because maybe we haven't seen enough of him yet. I liked what I saw like in the beginning. He's come back down to earth since like the first couple games. He's I think teams are seeing more tape on him, then it's going to make it, I guess, more difficult for him. He's going to have to adjust. He's turning the ball over too much, but I can give him obviously another like year and a half at minimum to really like evaluate him. But as far as right now, I was never a big proponent of Darnold, and unfortunately for the Jets, like I personally would ghost him, and I think for the future. But it's kind of interesting because I'll throw it to you guys. You guys can give me your adopt or ghost comment, but also touch on if you guys are in a scenario this year, you only win 2 games and you're maybe the first or second pick. Do you guys draft a quarterback again? Would you even consider it?
yeah, no, that's what I was, like. That's what I was about to say. Is like if we do end up having a crappy record, like we really tank, and like Tua is sitting there, or somebody like that, then I might consider doing it. Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I'm not saying that as like a way to ghost Darnold. I think you have to. You can still give Darnold some time, but you know, again, if then there's also the season after this one, you got Trevor Lawrence from Clemson, who I think is better than Tua, and is actually going to be very, very good in the NFL. So,
Or even Joe Burrow next year.
even Joe Burrow too.
Yeah,
It
that's where
really
I'm
is tough.
going. That's where I'm going. After watching the LSU Bama game last night, I think Joe Burrow is as cool as they come. He needed to lead that team down the field. On two different possessions, he did, and he looks special, man. He looks cool, calm, and collective. And honestly, like I wouldn't be opposed to the Jets drafting him next year, and having a quarterback competition with him and Darnold. I don't think that'd be the worst case scenario. If anything, I think it'd be good for the organization, and may the best man win. But we'll have to wait and see.
But realistically, though, in that situation, I mean, it's not exactly going to instill confidence in Darnold. I feel like that's more of like a ghost situation for Darnold if you're going to be drafting another quarterback, because, I mean, drafting after 2 years after they draft Darnold, you put yourself in his shoes. If they're drafting another quarterback 2 years later after they drafted you, how are you looking at your current job situation and job security in that team? I mean, it's not like, I think that the prospect of Darnold still being good after they do something like that, after they draft another quarterback high in the draft, and he's only 2 years into his career, I think that's almost like a signal that his career is ending with the Jets, because he's at least, I can't see him having any success or even winning that job, because again, if they're drafting another quarterback, that quarterback's going to come in with confidence that, all right, this is the team that wants to invest their future in me, and it's looking like the opposite for Darnold. So that's why I think in that scenario, you'd almost have to completely ghost Darnold. You maybe would have to – you can keep him on your roster as a backup, but I don't know what the use of that is. I think the most value there would be for Darnold at that point would be to try and trade him and have another team try and revive his career and revive his confidence.
It depends. I mean, it depends what his mentality is. It's either going to kill his confidence or it's going to motivate him to step up his game and compete with the quarterback that they draft or whoever they have else on their roster. I mean, honestly, the thing is, what's like, and even though Darnold and Daniel Jones are mobile, like in today's NFL, like you need like having somebody like a Lamar or a Russell Wilson. Like it's, again, that sounds like I'm Captain Obvious here, but it's so valuable having guys that can like get out and run. I mean, that's why, like, I think Tua's a bit small, but, like, his mobility and his ability to just, like, get in and out and shift, I mean, that's such a big asset to have in the NFL in today's – especially if you're not going to have a good offensive line. I mean, if the Jets don't want to draft an offensive line, then, like, go find a mobile quarterback somewhere and, run your offense that way. You know what I mean?
Hey, Kyler Murray's already starting to do it. And
that's what I'm saying. Arizona's line is not good. And Murray makes the team better because he can move.
Sure.
And it's like Russell Wilson in Seattle. Their line has sucked for years now, but he's MVP candidate because he can move. It's like,
Russell Wilson's pretty unbelievable too. I mean, the way that he's the most composed quarterback maybe I've ever seen with regards to like you said, their offensive line. For the most part, the last 5 years has not been that good. And he finds a way to escape pressure, compose himself, and then he'll still throw downfield. And you'll see him hit guys downfield like Lockett. And then even now they got a guy like DK Metcalf, who I've been trying to talk up the last couple weeks. He's had some pretty good weeks recently. So yeah, that's I wish that was a problem.
I was very upset that you started DJ Metcalf against me last week, right?
Yeah, I mean,
you went off.
The week before I was actually saying, like on the podcast with Tony D, that I was looking at DK Metcalf as a potential like pickup for fantasy or maybe plug and play the week before, and then I didn't pull the trigger. But I was playing you. I figured he was going to put up like 30 points, so I had to pull the trigger because I needed to pass you this week,
especially against that Tampa defense.
Yeah. That's why
I think that defense is giving up like some of the most points in the NFL. So that's a good start there. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, well, the over/under in that game, the Arizona Cardinals at Tampa Bay Bucks, is like 52.5 points, I believe. So yeah, they're projecting that one to be a high-scoring game. I can see that.
It's gonna be a shootout. Yeah.
All right, boys. I think we're done with that game for now. You guys have any closing statements about either your team or what's going on in your lives? How many orange shirts you have in your wardrobe? Anything like that?
Also, I didn't say that I'm wearing the orange shirt today because I think the Browns are going to cover.
Yeah.
My lock of the maybe the year. I think Browns today -3 at home against the Bills. So if you want to bet on it. want to use my bookie, it's actually Browns -3. It's like the odds are plus 100. So
I thought you were about to show like a ref link or something like that. What about you, Zaddy?
So as you guys can see, I'm wearing my Rutgers shirt. And I know it's not NFL related, but I think Rutgers will cover the spread against Ohio State at home next week. I think they will cover that 75-point spread. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's got to be pretty close to like 70, 75 points. What about the game today? We haven't picked it yet. Giants are -3. I already took I think I already made my pick in the last episode. I took the Giants -3.
Can I pick the over? I mean, I agree. Jets +3. I mean, again, when two teams you have no idea and you don't think – if that's what they say. If both teams aren't that good, you take the points. So I would have to lean Jets +3, but what do I know? But I do like the over in that game. I think there's going to be some sloppy play, some turnovers, some touchdowns. I definitely like the over of 44.5. So, yeah.
I'm taking the Jets straight up in this game. No doubt about it.
Oh, my God. That's the most homer pick I've ever heard in my life. He doesn't even want the points. Well, you might as well log into your MyBookie account like Dietz does and take the Jets. They're current on DraftKings Sportsbook. They're actually plus 133 money line. So if you're looking to lose money today, ladies and gentlemen, the Jets money line I think is the way to go. But actually, the over/under actually just moved down to 44 from 44.5. So I don't know if that's a good thing because it seems like maybe money's going on the under because that's typically how things change, especially on Sunday morning. But yeah, I'm looking at the over in this game and Giants -3. All right, I think it's time to shut it off for the day. Good luck to the Giants and the Jets. Hopefully, we see at least a high-scoring game and a little bit of entertainment, or more entertainment than we've seen in the past recent weeks. For everybody following us on Twitter or not following us, our @ is @2nd&9 on Twitter. Click the like button on YouTube, subscribe, click that bell, and we'll be back with you next time. See you later.